And we are live. It's alive.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Steve Van Sampson,
Curtis M. Lawson,
Paul Christian Glenn, Joshua Rex, Raz, Rob Smith,
Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of the Clutch of Personalities. You have Delphine here with Ratatosker hanging out. He's not drinking tonight. He got very hungover this weekend, so just none for him. Bad squirrel. Got Friday over here, and today we are interviewing an awesome author from down in Louisiana. He has written some beautiful, dark, lovely stuff. Blaine Daigle, everyone. So how's everybody doing today?
I'm doing great. Father's Day was today, so my wife took the kids and gave me a day just to sit and write. I'm currently finishing up a novel as we speak. So it was nice to get a good steady stream of hours of just being able to just pound the words out.
Oh, I wish I could do that. I have a steady stream of hours where I sit and stare at the screen and then I'll go to Wikipedia for a little bit. That's research, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course it is.
Absolutely.
Friday, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. I've been having a day. But
all right.
I'm definitely glad to meet you, Blaine, and I'm looking forward to when you come on my show as well.
Absolutely.
Right, you get him twice on the Owleye Network. Hi, Tom Dog. Blaine has written a few books now. We have A Dark Rue, as well as I'm trying to get all the names. A Dark and Endless Sea, and The Broken Places. And each of us have read some of all of them, and all of some of them. So I just finished up his most recent, which is A Dark and Endless Sea. And I have to say that and I've been listening to The Broken Places, and I'm in the middle of reading A Dark Rue. And I was really expecting, with somebody from Louisiana, A Dark Rue was something I was like, oh yeah. And then when I started reading A Dark and Endless Sea, I was like, how does he know cold? He lives in a place where it is like eternally warm and you are covered in sweat because, I mean, I'm from Nebraska and it's been like 90 with 50% humidity. So, it's like you kind of step outside and die. But every time I go to New Orleans or anywhere down in the South, you step outside and you're just breathing water.
Pretty
Like my
much. Yeah.
glasses, but you write the cold, and we do the cold here in Nebraska too. Nebraska has weather. It's what we do.
Mhm.
And this book takes place out in the Bering Strait, and it's just so amazing the way you cover just what it's like to constantly have the cold, and no matter what you're putting on, it just seeps into you. Um, it fascinated me. So I guess I'm going to ask, like, I know that's a weird thing to start off asking a book on, but have you traveled up in that area in the north, or spent winters somewhere where you've gotten to experience a lot of the cold? Or
No, the farthest I've ever traveled north was Chicago. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about living on the Gulf Coast, especially in like Louisiana, is that when we get like our 2 weeks of winter at the end in December every year, because the air is so humid, it makes our, like, let's say like 45 degrees, it makes it feel like it's like 25 degrees just because the air is so saturated. So writing something like A Dark and Endless Sea, when you're on the Bering Sea and you've got, moisture in the air being blown off the sea by the wind and the waves and all that, it creates a very similar feeling, significantly colder, I would assume. But so yeah, I've never traveled that far north. I just did a lot of research. I listened to a lot of people, and I listened to a lot of people specifically when I wrote my first book, which is set in the Yukon, which is, also up there with the cold. I listened to people who did live in that area talk about the difference in, okay, the cold up there versus the cold somewhere else.
Mhm.
So a lot of interviews went into me just sort of learning what that cold is like.
Yeah, because we get into like this. I think this winter alone, we had some where there were nights it would get down to the feels like it would be like -15, but feels like -40 and
Yeah.
stuff around here. It's the cold that kills. You don't want to be outside for more than 10 minutes, or you're losing skin because
Yeah.
it's just gonna fall off. But the reason I was focusing suddenly, like right off the bat, on the weather is because the character goes through the constant coldness. Hey, Stefan. And that adds to like something you do really, really well from everything I've been reading of yours, and from that in particular, is you do loneliness, you do isolation, you do people locked in themselves. And the way that in this, and in the one in the Yukon, Broken Places, uh, the cold adds to that feeling of isolation and separation from everybody else, because it traps you in yourself, because you can't stop feeling it. You don't act like people say, oh, you go numb to it. You never actually totally grow numb to it. You're always feeling it. And so it helps to separate the characters in a way. Um, and I really like the way that you do that with the isolation. Was was that part of it intentional as well, or?
100%. Yeah. When I first sat down to write The Broken Places, I knew I'd always wanted to write like a snowy story. And when I started actually kind of mapping out, the events and what happens and all that stuff, it made sense. At its heart, it's a cabin in the woods story. So that in and of itself gives it that air of loneliness and that air of isolation. And then, the cold aspect of it, the Yukon's cold. And I was looking for a really remote area. And the Yukon is the most remote province in Canada. It's got the lowest population of India, despite the fact that it's quite large. So it was like, all right, well, I've got this snowy, isolated area, and the cold just adds to that. And I think a lot of times you think about it, like, going back to Louisiana for a second, when it's in the middle of the summer and it's 98 degrees and it's 90% humidity, we could stay inside if we wanted to, but our electric bill is going to be through the roof. So what's smart for us to do is to turn the AC off for a day, go to a pool, or go find somewhere where you can do something and cool off, where you can actually get out and do stuff. Cold doesn't let you do that. Like you said before, cold, like if it's 100 degrees, you can go outside and keep yourself cool. When it's negative 40 degrees, you will die. Like there's just no way around that. So cold kind of constricts you in. And so I thought it was just a perfect, brew of everything that I wanted that story to be.
Yeah, and it definitely keeps everybody I've been through that. I've been snowed in on the farm that I grew up on, or the acreage that I grew up on, and it's like you can't get anywhere. You're just
Right.
there for a week. So we always had a very full pantry just in case, because there could be up to 2 weeks maybe before, and we only lived a couple miles from town, but in a small area, they aren't going to go and snow plow out these people before they, you know,
Yeah.
get the rest of the roads going. So it's a big issue. The other way you separated, and gonna stick with broken places again here real quick. Um, each of them had I posted something about being an Olympic level dreamer, and that kind of goes more with um Dark and Endless Sea. Your books are so long. I'm sorry if I stumble on titles. You have no idea how much I read on a regular basis, and I've probably gone through like 5 novels and about 80 comics in the past less than a week. So,
Well, you can blame my publisher for that. The original title of the book was Leviathan. He asked me to change it, and A Dark and Endless Sea is what came. So if you stumble over it, it's his
okay.
fault.
Okay. Publisher's fault. I'm getting this right. But in both of them, you have like the dreams that they're having as well, and uh, all of the people are separate and they have their own secrets. So we keep learning little bits about them more and more. So it's like everyone is kind of um, an unreliable narrator, because some of them don't even know anything about themselves, or they're remembering things, or they've blocked things out, and a lot of that comes from trauma, which is something that Jenny had wanted to mention Friday. So
Okay. I've noticed you have a penchant for this beautiful thing of thinking about your characters like people. You're
Yes.
writing people in these situations, but each of these people you've thought out, okay, what can happen in the cold with this particular injury? And how would that add to the trauma of everything else that has happened to him or will happen to him? Or what can happen if they're on some type of drug and it's messing with their memory and their dreams? How much thought have you put in like researching and each of these characters as people? Do you re- like believe, not believe, but decide I want to write about this one thing happening to this person? Do you talk to people? Do you look it up on the internet? How do you research the traumas?
A little bit of everything. Luckily we live in a time where almost any information, particularly with trauma and the psychological effects that it has, it's available, like that. So if I wanted to figure out, okay, well, how would this particular incident affect this character's psyche, and how would someone who's gone through something like this, how might that mess with the chemical balances in their minds? I can go into a Google search and I will get information very, very quickly. But another big part of it is pretty simply just, not to sound creepy, but people watching. And unfortunately, like my job as a teacher, I teach high school English. I've done it now for 10 years. And one of the things that unfortunately kind of comes with the job of being a teacher is you sort of see kids who have been through the absolute ringer. And when that happens, especially as you get to know them, you start to kind of get a sense on how certain things affect certain people. So that plays a big part of it as well. I'm sorry if my dog's making noises. That plays a part in it as well. Hey, it's another dog. You've seen them before. Sorry. So that plays a big role in it. And then just going from there, research as much as humanly possible. I like to follow the rabbit hole. Like in Broken Places, I have a character has a physical injury from his past. Well, I developed that based on, okay, well, let me see how far down the rabbit hole I can go. And, from there, it led to these other things. Okay, well, then how would this be affected in this part of the story? And how would this part of the story reflect something that had happened years before? And so a lot of research, a lot of people watching, a little bit of personal, just understanding people who've been through that kind of stuff, and then following the rabbit hole.
Do you mind if I bring up the particular incident that happened with another one of the characters?
Let me put my dog up real quick. I'm so sorry.
It's no problem at all. Don't worry about it.
We love puppies.
We do. We are fans of the animals here on the Owlite Network.
Sorry, we have rabbits in our backyard that the dog thinks are like the devil. So,
my mom has a little mini half Jack Russell, half Dachshund, who weighs 8 pounds, but is all about defending the neighborhood until she actually has to come face to face with something. But if it's out that window, that pup is, I am the protector of everything. So
right,
totally understand.
I'm so sorry. So, what was you talking about bringing something up?
There was a particular incident in that keeps haunting not the main character and not Sean. It's Noah, right? I believe.
Right, correct.
Can I mention what happened to him, or would you rather not? Because that's kind of a spoiler.
I mean, you learn it 40 pages in, so I'm cool with it.
Okay, so Noah is a character, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because coming from a farming family and living in a place where there are a lot of grain elevators, people don't understand how deadly they can be. And this one character that you written was in a grain bin. And the thing is, folks, if you're ever in a grain bin doing things, you need to make sure that you are on a harness and that you are connected to something on top and that you are never alone. You always go in as a team and have somebody up above keeping track of you, because grain bins will suddenly turn into piles of quicksand and suck you under and then crush you to death, suffocate you, etc. And I've never seen anybody bring that up in a book before. People just don't understand how dangerous farming can be. They'll occasionally I'll come across a tractor accident or something, but that's something else where I'm curious, because like I said, I've never seen it used before. Is that something that you just kind of came across, or is it or is that something that you knew something about? Like,
when I was in college, I guess it was probably my freshman year of college, which was about 2011. There was like a string of stories that happened like very quickly in succession, where you had 4 or 5 people who all died by going into grain bins. And because it was happening so much, I just sort of learned like, okay, well, what exactly happens? And back then I had no clue about it. I didn't understand, like, where I'm from, we don't really have grain. We do sugarcane. So I didn't really understand, like, okay, well, what happens with it? And when I actually read it and read what that entails, it was horrifying. And I was like, well, if I'm looking for trauma, that's something that'll seriously screw somebody up. So it just kind of really worked. But yeah, it was just a bunch of incidents that piqued my curiosity. And when I looked into it, it was just like, wow, that is intense.
Yeah, there was an incident with my family when my grandfather and father were up, and one of them started getting sucked down into it. So that's why I was just like, for me, it's a personal thing, I guess, where it caught me, because it's like, this is what could have happened, with when they were up there doing stuff, and it's just like, oh. But so yeah, I'm really, I'm all about the characters and stuff. When we're bringing up, God damn it, Dark and Endless Sea.
Just say the ocean one.
The ocean one. When we go to the ocean one, you did such a good job there, like I said, with isolating people and having everybody. It's pretty early on, you guys do get to see some of this, so once again, I don't think I'm completely destroying stuff, The main character, or spoiling stuff, the main character in this has no memories. As we're watching him walk through, he doesn't know where he's going exactly. He has horrible nightmares, and they lead him on to places where he doesn't know why he's going there. He doesn't know how he's gotten where he's gotten. He doesn't remember where he's from. He has to write his name on his hand to remember that much. And then going out onto the sea where you're isolating yourself further, but for him it almost feels initially like it's a good thing, get away from all these people who I don't know, at least here I'll have a purpose kind of thing. And then it brings him in contact with some other people who have kind of similar things going on. But at first I wasn't sure what all inspired this. I felt a little bit of like, initially I wondered if it was going to go into some cosmic horror style stuff, or where it went. And you did bring some mythologies and a lot of the different kind of um, old creatures and all the things that we study. You reach into so many different areas with it, like with the creatures that you bring up and the way that you have things work out. And what all were you doing when you knit them all together? Were you looking for anything specific outside of just creatures in the ocean and things? And did you study a lot of dream? I dream like crazy. This is why Olympic level dreamer. I sleep like 10 to 14 hours a day. I'm epileptic. I have a lot of medication. It does things, and I vividly remember all of them. And I do have nightmares from a lot of this stuff. So I'm always fascinated when people write a lot about dreaming. And
So,
I kind of hit you with 4 questions at once there. Sorry.
oh no, you're good. I'll do my best to answer them all. So starting off with the whole aspect of like the ocean and nautical folklore, I grew up on the Gulf Coast. Like I've been around the ocean my entire life. And it's always fascinated me. I've always kind of imagined that if things had worked out differently and I'd never met my wife, that, I'd have moved to some little seaside village somewhere and that's where I'd be. But yeah, like I did a lot of research. I took a lot of creative liberties too. Just because a lot of nautical folklore can be contradictory to itself. So for instance, if you want to include like this particular, I don't know, folk like monster or myth or whatever, and you also want to include this one, they kind of butt heads, like in terms of how they can exist together. So there was a lot of creative liberties being taken there. But in terms of the dreaming, when I wrote this, my initial thought of it was I wanted this book to be as though Moby Dick had been written by H.P. Lovecraft. And that was kind of like the thought process that I went into it with. And then I was thinking to myself, all right, well, this idea of fever dreaming. And I wanted to really write a story that felt like a fever dream. I wanted to write a story that almost felt like you were extremely unsure of what was going on, whether you could trust the narrator, whether you could trust any of the characters, and whether the events that you were seeing were, hallucinations or if they were real. Because I think that, being around the ocean so much, the ocean, when you're out on the ocean, it can have that effect on you, especially when you're isolated, lonely, and all that. But doing the research, I know you had mentioned like the medication. One of the big things that I was trying to find out was, all right, well, what's the type of medication that they could take that would suppress the dreams? Only to find in research that all medication essentially is going to make the dreams more vivid. So I had to, go around that and find a different, shockingly enough, the one that I found that actually does suppress dreams is the easiest one for them all to get. So that worked out. But yeah, like, so it was a lot of just loving the ocean, being fascinated by the ocean, a lot of research, and being really interested in dreaming, because dreams have always fascinated me, especially from at a young age. I used to have like a reoccurring nightmare that actually is in the Broken Places. The reoccurring nightmare that Ryan has in the Broken Places is the one that I had growing up. And I always was fascinated by the fact that it was like, why can I not remember my dreams, but I remember that one like
Mhm.
so vividly that I can freaking sit down and write a book and have it be a huge part of the book and have every detail exactly the way it was. You know, what does that say about my psyche? What does that say about you know, how I'm perceiving the dreams? Like, I don't like, to me, that's all that stuff is just fascinating.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think I answered everything, but tell me if I didn't.
No, I think you covered it all. um, Friday had another question for you.
I love how you, in both books that I've read, The Darkest Places and the formerly known as Leviathan book. I hope that's okay because I trip over my tongue as well. Uh,
You're good.
your characters are aware of themselves. They also are aware of what they think the other characters are doing, how they feel and think. In your process of writing, when you're doing the book, do you have like cheat sheets that you make of this character's been through this, this, and this? Or is it something you can keep together in your head as you're writing it?
I can keep it together in my head as I'm writing it, mainly because I don't find that I use very big casts. I think Dark and Endless Sea is probably my biggest cast so far, and none of them can remember anything either. So it all kind of works together. But yeah, for the most part, it's just in my head. I don't really like to do the whole like cheat sheet stuff because I feel as though at a certain point the story is going to start telling itself, and if I try too hard to stick to that path of the cheat sheets and making sure that all this makes sense, then I feel like I miss out on opportunities for the story to evolve and go in a different, more appropriate and better direction.
So you're a pantster.
A little bit of both. I do like to outline to an extent. I'll do like a treatment of a book, or I'll put like all the main things that I know for a fact I want to have happen. Like when I wrote The Broken Places, I knew for a fact I wanted to have that scene in the road with the deer. When I wrote A Dark Rue, I knew for a fact that I wanted to have that scene at the old river church. When I wrote Endless Sea, I know for a fact that I wanted to have that scene with the albatross. And then from there, that's just like it's like a skeleton. So I'll plot the skeleton, but I'll pants the muscles and the blood and all that goes around it, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, that albatross scene was brutal. That it was just like, wow, okay. That
Well, I
not
read.
like weird, okay, but just like, damn.
Well, yeah, in college, I mean, we read Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a huge influence on Dark and Endless Sea. The first part of the book is actually titled The Ancient Mariner. And there's a lot of references to the poem in the actual work. And there's really there was the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and then there's a lot of Macbeth. And I try to like kind of combine the two of them into certain elements in the story. And I love doing that. I love taking little hints from folklore and different stories and seeing if I can make them work together. I mean, shoot, a Dark Rue's entire story is based around Louisiana folklore and the idea of the Southern ghost story and how I can intertwine those two into one cohesive story.
Now, speaking of little tidbits, and this is one that I grabbed on because I've used it before in the first story that I was published in, and I'm not sure if you intended it or not. But the first artifact that is found in the crab buckets, it reminded me of The Temple by H.P. Lovecraft, where they find these. Is that where you grabbed it from, or
It
is it
wasn't.
just
It wasn't.
coincidental?
So it wasn't. I was just looking for something, and you know, whales had primarily been spoken about a little bit by the characters. There was the whale song, so I was like, oh, that's perfect for it. And then shockingly enough, after I wrote the rough draft is when I stumbled across that story, and I was like, oh, okay, I can see it. So when you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, that does kind of tie.
Okay, yeah, because I just, like I said, it was something that I based my first story on, and I was just like, "Ooh, we have kind of a connection," but not as close as I thought. But it
Still
works.
there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something after the show too that connects the two. But don't want to spoil this book because you guys got to really read these books. Oh my God, they're
Definitely.
all three stories are very different,
Very different.
but
But
very good.
I think they all
And
share the same DNA. Like
I I
they're
always
very different, but there's a thread.
Yeah, I something I do, and I don't try to categorize an author by this, but I always try to find something that you write this better than I've seen a lot of people write it, and you use it more than once. And for you, I would say that is the loneliness, the just ability to be trapped inside yourself even when you're around other people. And you don't just do it with one character. It's like it shows how everybody has that kind of sense of it, that where it's just there's the you inside that nobody else knows, and that a lot of people don't share that, perhaps, as you don't get to know everybody. And that's something that I've noticed with everything that I've read from you so far, that I didn't get through every story, but you can see it in the beginnings on some of them too. Like, okay, this is what's keeping this character trapped inside themselves.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that I'm cognizant of it with every story that I write. Um, and part of that can be traced to when I was growing up. I didn't have a traumatic childhood by any stretch of the imagination. My parents are both great people, but we moved around a lot, so I was starting new schools a lot. And when you're the new kid a lot, you sort of kind of go into yourself a little bit. So, growing up, especially those middle school ages, when I was changing schools, uh, it was at times very lonely. And you start to kind of collapse into yourself, I guess is a way to say it. So, that's always kind of in the back of my head. And I think that I'm very aware of it when I'm writing. Like, it's not something that is just, by happenstance slipping into the narrative. It's there and it's very much tied to me. So, but yeah, it's definitely what I would say has been the most commonly brought up kind of trademark that exists in all three of the books that I've written. And in the two that I have coming out next year, I can tell you right now that it's in there as well. Like it's just kind of, where my sweet spot lands.
And it's very relatable to people. So I think that's another reason why people are going to really enjoy getting into your writing. It's beautiful. We have a question in the I think your guys spiritual. Um,
Are
so
you a
I guess, are you
spiritual person?
spiritual? Yeah.
I'm Louisiana born and bred Catholic. And especially, I tell people this a lot of the time, and I don't know if people truly understand. Because I have gone to different states and I've visited and I've talked to people, and Louisiana Catholicism and the Catholicism that you'll find in other states is kind of different. And one of my favorite things I like to say is the fact that, like, for instance, in Louisiana, um, Catholicism and voodoo are very often linked and almost interchangeable in a lot of ways. And there's a whole history behind that with, when Haitians came to New Orleans and you had the French Canadians coming down, and that all kind of combined with it. And then in terms of like the whole spirituality part of it, I'm fascinated by other beliefs. I enjoy researching them. I like to kind of find out. I love folklore. Um, so I guess it all just kind of blends together for me.
I have noticed that you have called your writing Gothic folklore, folklore Gothic. That is a new term to me, and I was wondering if you could expound on what it means for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Gothic style of literature has always been probably my favorite. I love good old fashioned creepy ghost stories, abandoned castles, all that fun stuff. Um, and the book that, I'll put it this way. When I went to college, one of the things that I absolutely despise about writing programs at college is how much they like to look down their nose at genre fiction and kind of sit on like a high horse and act like, oh, this isn't real literature kind of crap. And the problem is that when you're around that enough, you sort of start to believe it. And when I got out of college for a while, I wasn't really reading horror. But the book that got me back into horror was Adam Neville's The Ritual, which is folk horror as it gets. And I realized how much I loved this and how cool it was, and these ideas of like, these other cultures and these other belief systems and the really, really neat and interesting ideas that they have. And one of the coolest things I find is that if you take all these religions and all these, different beliefs across the world, how often you see their beliefs kind of intertwining a little bit and you start to see commonalities peeking out. And I thought that was really interesting, which is something that does come into play with the Broken Places, especially. And when I wrote The Broken Places, I set out to write a folk horror novel. That was the goal. What I found was even doing that, the Gothic elements seeped in. And then when I sat down to write A Dark Rue, my entire purpose was to write a Southern Gothic ghost story. And what I found then was that the folklore elements started seeping through. So I kind of realized that for me, it's like Gothic folk is just a really good way of describing, where my mind goes and the kind of ideas that I have. So that's what it means to me. It's the folklore kind of concepts and topics with that Gothic ambiance or that Gothic flavoring, if you will, that I think best describes the kind of stuff that I write. Because even A Dark and Endless Sea, this is a Lovecraftian style story set in the middle of the freaking ocean. But in a lot of ways, I wrote the ship like a haunted house. Like it's the Gothic elements are still kind of coming through. So yeah, for me, Gothic folk is just really, that's what it means to me.
As you've said before, it's not the first type of haunted ship story that you've come across. You've looked into others. Like
Right.
I think you said the Mary Celeste.
Yes.
And that had interested you greatly?
Ghost ships in general interest me, especially when like my rational brain. Yes, all of those ships that disappeared before the advent of sonar, they probably sank. That's the general idea. That's what happened. But I think it's just so cool to think about, well, what if they didn't? And like people seeing them. And I think that with nautical legends, especially the fact that so many of them haven't changed. So many of them are still spoken of today by people who travel the seas in the same vein, despite the fact that our rational mind knows that this is not what happened. And yet it still really kind of ignites the imagination.
I'm going to go back just a second. You were talking about the religious stuff, and I had to like pause and grab something. I couldn't find it right off the bat, but
step away for 1 second, please. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, no problem.
Puppies are fun. Were you able to find all the things you were looking for?
Yes, I was. I had to dig through my purse because I didn't think to grab it out ahead of time, but something occurred to me, and I was like, "Ooh, I must grab it." I actually have 2 of these.
Sorry, she did not. She does not like the fact that I'm in the other room and she couldn't get to me.
That's okay.
That's
Understand. But I have my Marie Laveau, one of my Marie Laveau prayer cards that,
nice.
And it has the prayer on the back. But like it is when you go down to New Orleans and just in Louisiana, everything's really tied together there. They don't seem to, and nobody cares. That's another thing that I've noticed.
Yeah.
you get the nicest people that I have ever met down in Louisiana. If you need anything, nobody's going to be snippy with you unless they're a tourist.
Well, that was one of the reasons why whenever I wrote A Dark Root, one of my really strong intentions was I wanted to portray voodoo as voodoo actually is. You know, I think there's this idea of Louisiana that's in like the public lexicon and like what New Orleans is like and what voodoo is like. And the simple fact of the matter is that it's almost all wrong. Like one of my favorite, like for instance, voodoo dolls has nothing to do with voodoo. It's Spanish. It was Spanish dolls brought over to New Orleans, and it was just kind of ingrained in the culture. It has nothing to do with it. So whenever I wrote A Dark Root, one of my big things I wanted to do was I wanted to give an accurate portrayal of voodoo. Because one of the things that people find shocking when like they'll talk about like, oh, well, you're a Louisiana Catholic, like, well, isn't voodoo like devil worship? We're like, no, in no way, shape, or form is what that is. And I think that people don't realize just how intertwined a lot of it really is, especially when you consider the fact that for instance, in voodoo, there are these things called loes, which are like the spirits, and they essentially pray to these spirits for guidance and this and that. And voodoo is a monotheistic religion. It's not witchcraft. It's a monotheistic religion. It has one God and many spirits. And what ended up happening was you had all these Haitians that came from Haiti who wanted to practice their religion. Well, 1800s Louisiana, probably not the best place to be if you're a Haitian. And what they ended up doing was they found out that, all right, well, the Catholics have saints, which are spirits that they pray to for guidance, just like they have the lewas that are spirits that they pray to for guidance. And when they realized was, for instance, Saint Peter in the Catholic doctrine is extremely similar to this particular lewa in voodoo. So they would go to the Catholic churches and they would just essentially undercover pray to their gods and their spirits. And then as people realized what was actually going on, they just embraced the idea of it, and it became its whole different thing of Cajun and Creole culture, which if like you said before, if you ever been down here, it's a very unique blend. And, you know, for all the problems that we do have in Louisiana, that is something that I think most Louisianans are pretty proud of, is the fact that, especially the further down you get in like that Cajun Creole country, a lot of the strife that occurs in other places isn't quite as strong.
Yeah, there's
I think Dylan's asking if you've read any Anton Lavey books or Lavey.
I have not. Not off the top of my head.
Anton LaVey was the founder of the Satanic.
Oh, that's
he
right.
wrote the Satanic Bible. Yeah.
Right.
I
knew the name Anton from somewhere. I was like, where have I heard that before? No, I haven't.
And they also say voodoo dolls are true, as nothing with dolls, there's not Catholic God in it. I'm not fully sure on this one.
I'm not sure.
Definitely something I'd want to look up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, LaVey was the founder. There's so many different names, but there's the Church of Satan.
Right.
And then, which actually is another one where if you compare it, like a lot of the tenets, it's not, some of it's kind of gets a little bit out there because he did have a rather dramatic way of doing things at times. But there's also things like basically if you go into someone else's home, you respect them. You will not hurt people. You will, I don't want to say some of the, I think we can get in trouble for some of the words on stuff, but you do not force yourself on someone. You do not do these things. You do not hurt children. So it has some tenets in it as well, where it's like, okay, people don't realize, they just assume that it's like, oh, we're gonna go murder babies naked in the woods or something, and it's like, no, that's nothing to do with this. And the same way you're saying with the saints, and like, it's like, oh, we're praising Mary. Actually, we're doing Israeli, but same thing, just a different name. That's all we got. Different name for her. And it does, like, the New Orleans voodoo versus traditional Haitian voodoo is slightly different
Yes,
as to
it's a
it.
unique blend.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The other thing I wanted to bring up about the Dark Brew, and I'd mentioned this to you prior to the show. The Andrew Ward, who he's amazing. If you guys check out New Orleans stuff, he's a really big historian for stuff. He's a younger guy as well, and he's just very. He was writing a paper when he was the tour guide that I had, and it was basically comparing New Orleans to a third world country. And when I was reading some of the stuff in A Dark Brew, like, a lot of just how run down things had gotten, and a lot of it I know is because of, like, the hurricanes and things. And when you keep getting hit over and over and over, it's just hard to keep rebuilding and keep quality. But there's a huge population in Louisiana that is very, very below poverty level, and there's a whole culture for that's going on. And, like, um the lack of education that a lot of people, I'm not, as a teacher, I'm sure how.
That's right. I'm fully aware.
Yeah. And it's not something that people even really look down on so much. It's just an accepted part of, yeah, we just have a lot of people that, there's the homeless thing, or you start off in that book, she's a social worker and dealing with so many kids and so many drug problems and things like that, and just people who are lost through the cracks constantly. And I appreciate that you had included that. I haven't finished that one yet, but in the book, because you're giving a real taste. And I know that other authors have done it. When I went, I'd read enough Anne Rice that when I first went down to New Orleans, I actually kind of knew my way around downtown a little bit. Like, and now that I've been there a few times, I can walk you through places all on my own. Do not walk on Bourbon Street, by the way, guys. Don't.
No,
it's bad.
not
Go down to Royale. Yeah, go to Royale. It's like a block away, and it smells 400 times better.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people forget that the French Quarter is bigger than just Bourbon Street.
Yeah, Bourbon Street is now like t-shirt shop, shots, t-shirt shop, shots, t-shirts,
Yeah.
t-shirts, ladies standing on a cooler handing out body shots or vials of things. And it's like, just skip Bourbon Street. It's really not where you want to be.
There are better places.
Yeah, and honestly, there's the French Quarter, but Frenchman's District is quite nice as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry, totally going off on something. But Friday had another question for you.
I'm sorry. I have quite many that will go into both interviews, but this one I had noticed as we were talking and as I was reading that you had thought out how like the animals or the sea or basically I sort of think of like the animals are like a sort of a side character, or what the sea can do is sort of a side character because they can fully do more than people normally think about. But also how the gods or goddesses or lower or whichever spiritual being that you have chosen to be part of that world that your story is set in, how one should respect it, and if it's not respected the way it is put out, it has shown it likes to be respected, it will come and back and let you know there is a problem. How much of this was did you add as your own world, and how much of it did you take out of stuff you've studied uh, around Louisiana and other theologies?
I mean, Louisiana for a dark root was pretty simple. It was, that's where I grew up. It's my folklore, if you will. There wasn't a whole lot of research that needed to be done with that one, besides just clarifying a few things and making sure that I wasn't misrepresenting something. Like one of the things that I did do is I did meet with a guy who was a voodoo practitioner, and I kind of made sure that I had all the facts like down pat, that I wasn't misrepresenting something without knowing it. But the other parts with Broken Places and Endless Sea, a lot of it was research. Like I said, and a lot of it was creative liberties. I think a lot of the folklore that's present in the Broken Places, a lot of people have asked me like, okay, well, is that like a specific indigenous tribe or what the case may be? I get people a lot of times like, oh, is it a Wendigo? Like, no, it's not a Wendigo. It's not even the right part of Canada for the Wendigo to believe to be popular. Really and truly, what it is, it's a combination of Slavic folklore, Russian folklore, Yukon folklore, all kind of blended into a specific, what it ended up being. And then with Endless Sea, like I said, it was more creative liberties. It was, all right, I'm taking this idea of a siren, and I'm taking this idea of the biblical Leviathan, or the Norse Jormungandr. I hope I said that right. The world serpent.
Jormungandr.
Yeah. And I try to just combine that into some kind of cohesive narrative that makes sense. And with that, it was a lot of research. Especially trying to make sure that I didn't have conflicting ideas, where I didn't have a situation where, okay, well, this thing is behaving a certain way, and yet that contradicts what the folklore says, if that makes sense. Because I forgot who it was that I read this from. I wish I could remember his name. But he was talking about the fact that like our general Western idea of the Wendigo is like the thing with the antlers, and in the actual mythology, apparently it doesn't look like that at all. And so I was like, I want to avoid that. I want to avoid trying to take, because I mean, think about it, when you're doing folklore, you're looking at other people's beliefs, other people's religious viewings. And the last thing you want to do is to misrepresent it or insult it in a way. I didn't want to do that. So I thought it was best for me to kind of just create my own folklore from these little bits and pieces taken from everywhere else. But to do that took a lot of research and a lot of very careful planning to make sure that, A plus B does in fact equal C.
And I love how you put your spin on the sirens, how they would see the sirens and what the sirens would do.
Yeah, that was hard, especially because one of the things that I learned is that, we had this idea of like the siren is like the mermaid, but that's not actually how the siren was originally intended. It was like a bird. And I was like, well, that doesn't exactly work for my story. So I guess we're going to just go ahead and stick with a mermaid. But yeah, it was just, I kind of took it and I said, all right, well, how can I maybe do this a little bit differently?
And the way you pulled things with combining the mythologies and being like known as this, known as, depending on where you're from, they're known as different things. And because there's that, some beliefs that a lot of different mythologies are just takeoffs of each other, and like, or that every mythology or folklore belief system has like a trickster and a death and a beauty and different types of creatures, that they might be a different creature in each one, but they all have a similar symbolism that holds them together. Everybody found these same aspects of nature and aspects of life that they decided they needed to be represented as a physical being of some sort.
Right.
And so you have like the monkey god who's a trickster in one religion is Coyote in some other ones.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Hanuman, that's the monkey god. Forgive me. Don't play any tricks on me tonight. I've been reading his stuff. It's gonna scare me. I I love to go. What?
I said Blaine's already given me nightmares. I accidentally fell asleep while listening to Dark Places, and the animals came through my front door, and I'm like, "What?" And it turned out just to be Josh letting the cat inside.
I mean, I'm saying in Broken Places, some of the scenes in there with the animals, just like, the fuck, dude. Okay,
Well, a lot of that
I love it.
a lot of that came from, when I was a senior in high school was when Deepwater Horizon out in the Gulf of Mexico exploded, and they had that massive oil spill, which basically made going to the beach. Like, if you're from this area, summertime, if you're going to go on a vacation, you're probably going to Gulf Shores, Pensacola, you're going to the beach. Well, we couldn't do that summer because all the beaches were roped off because the state officials were doing their best to try to keep the oil at bay, and it was just destroying ecosystems. So I was a senior about to go off for college, and my family wanted to do one last trip before I left home, and we went to the mountains in Georgia, and we're at this cabin. It's super remote, and one night it was like 2 a.m. or something like that. I got up because I was thirsty, and I walked downstairs, and the cabin had these big old tall windows. And I walked to the fridge to get like a drink of milk or something like that. And I turned, and as I turned, a deer for some reason was just standing outside one of those windows and just looking in. And it was like scared the living crap out of me. And then not only was it scary, but I just looked at this stupid freaking deer just looking at me. I was just like, okay, why aren't you going away? Go away, please. This is getting unnerving. Please go away. So eventually it walked off after God knows how long. And it was just like, I don't know what it was, but there was something unnerving about that deer just lingering there. So when I wrote The Broken Places, I was like, that's got to go in the book. Like, there's no way it can't.
Oh yeah. Yeah, growing up in rural Nebraska, you get a lot of animals, and my mom lives I'm in Lincoln, and she lives up on the north side of town that's being developed, and like where she lives is one of my ex's stepfather's deer blind was basically in the commons area of her backyard. So, hey Jody. So there are deer up there. There's one group that will feed the deer and the turkeys, because there's a gravel road that you can take up to get to her place. The rest of it's developed, but there's certain sections of it that are left off, more wooded and stuff, because some of the wealthier people own big chunks of the land, and they've left a lot of it wooded in that place. And so we'll go take the drive, and we always go to see if we can see deer and see if we can see turkeys. There's certain times of day that you're most likely to see them. But we've also seen, like, we weren't sure because there have been sightings of coyotes and bobcats up in the area, but you saw something chasing a deer, and the way it lopes was very different and low to the ground and stuff. And when people came out with that song, What Does the Fox Say? Fox is terrifying. It doesn't ring a ding ding or whatever the hell it does. A vixen shriek will scare the shit out of you if you're sitting outside at night.
The first time I ever heard we call them panthers down here. It's mountain lions, cougars, pumas, however you want to call them. The first time I ever heard one of those things scream, if you've never heard it, it sounds like someone's being, like a woman is just being stabbed to death. And it is harrowing. And the first time I heard it, I had no idea what it was. I'm sitting there, I'm like, am I witnessing a crime? Like, what is going on? And then it was explained to me, and that's just what they do, which I don't know exactly how that was supposed to comfort me. Like, okay, so it's not a dying woman, it's a giant cat that can eat me. That's what I'm dealing with. Okay. But yeah, just there's something about the sounds that they make. It's just blood curdling.
Yeah, but the deer and turkey and stuff, if they've been used to an area and if it's their home,
Right up.
they're just hanging out. They're like, no, you can deal with me. I don't need to deal with you. This is where I live. So,
We're like that with alligators.
oh yeah,
Constantly we have issues with them just like coming up into a storefront window, just because like they've always been here. No one's bothered them, so they don't really give a crap.
and we were just. My sister's getting ready to go on vacation, and they're going to find some place down south they can go. And we were doing the thing with, how do you know if there's a gator there? Well, you stick your fingers down, and when you pull them up, if there's water falling off them, there's gators.
My publisher sent me that video. He was like, "How accurate is this?" I'm like, "That's extremely accurate."
I can attest to that. Even here in Texas, we have a little park down the road that has a little creek that goes beside it. People have gotten video and posted it on Google for the park saying, no, you may actually find a gator here while you're at the walking park.
Yeah,
we have
there's
geese.
there's a road that runs, it's like the main highway that, it's not the interstate, but it's the highway that runs by the town that I grew up at, and it's next to a bayou. And you just look over during the summer, like July, there's every 20 feet, there's like a 10-foot alligator just out there sunning. Like, nope. It's just common.
I do want to see what happens, because like I said, we have geese up here, and I would like to pit like a Canadian goose or a Canada goose, I guess, up against a gator and see who wins.
I have heard that they're like that those geese are vicious.
The military uses them as like watchdogs in some area because they are horrifying. They hiss. My neighbor had some for the longest time across the alley. I've lived here in this like apartment for over 20 years now, and the neighbor across the way had them like guard dogs in his backyard. And I'd go to take the trash out and like peek across the alley, and these geese would come running up at the fence and they like hiss and they're like going to attack you. And if you've been around them, and like, I mean, I had a fence between me, but people who've been attacked, they are horrifying. And I mean, they can fly too, is one of the things. So they can get away from the gator and just like keep going at them. But you don't want to get bit by a goose, and their wingspan, they can hurt you with their wings as well. So
I've heard they are vicious little monsters.
Oh yeah. I guess it wouldn't really be fair to like, I mean, like, I would like to see how it plays out, but I don't want to be one of those people who are like, okay, let's make a cage match where we have. Well, and we could throw in a goat too, because some of those goats get pretty nasty. I love cute goats, but you can get some pretty nasty goats too.
Get some like black goats.
So, you said you have a couple of things in the works right now. Can you tell us anything about them, or?
Yeah. So I have my fourth novel, which is done. It's on like its 6th or 7th draft with me. Is coming out next March from Wicked House. It's called Ashes of August Manor. It is it's gothic folk. It's what it is. This one leans a little bit more into the gothic side. Then I have another book that I'm about, if I had to guess, probably about 10,000 words away from finishing the rough draft of it, called Porcelain Lullaby. And that is currently set for release next December. So I have next March and next December. And then sometime in between the two of them, I'm going to try my best to have a short story collection ready.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
I love shorts.
I didn't know you had short stories.
I need to get more of them.
I don't have the patience to get through the novel, but my short stories, I'm not very short on. I have issues with brevity, is what I call
I have the same problem is because so I'm still mastering the art of actually writing a short story. And every time I'm ready to send one off to go look at it, it's like, all right, well, here's the word count is it's got to be less than 4,000 words. And I'm like the number one thing my readers always say they like about my stuff is its atmosphere. How do you want me to make it atmospheric in 4,000 words or less? I haven't really figured out how to do that yet.
Yeah, you build such great worlds. I can see everything where I'm at. I know what the cabin looks like. I know what all these different things are. And so, yeah, that is really difficult to do in a short period of time. And your character development too is wildly in depth, which I love. I'm a big character person. We need to do a quick ad break, and then I'm going to jump back to some questions. And if you happen to have a reading for us, that would be awesome. I'm not sure if you had anything prepared or not, but we'll find out, guys, in just a second. And don't forget to comment, because I will be giving away a copy of A Dark and Endless Sea at the end of this show. And so get ready for the ads and make sure you comment so that you are entered in the drawing.
Greetings and shabebans. We are the Retro Reductibus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Well, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite Steve's trying to say is that on Retro Reductibus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Dorking Podcast Network with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Octopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
Welcome back, everybody. And yes, everybody always needs more good reads. I think,
And
anyway.
you got some great storytellers with both these lovely people here.
So I think I kind of might have put you on the spot, but did you have any reading that you'd like to do?
You do, actually.
All right. Let me
I
blow
thought
you
about-
up here.
I thought about what I wanted to do, and I did a reading with Andrew Nyberg a while back, and this is the scene in A Dark and Endless Sea that I read, and it got a really good response, so I figured I could do it again. This is from chapter 14 in the book, which is entitled The Hold, and what you have to understand, going into this particular part is that at this point, these characters are exhausted, both from the physical and grueling nature of the work, but also from their issues with their memory and the paranoia and darkness that's starting to kind of seep in to them mentally. So this is chapter 14 entitled The Hold. Another dull gray sky, another rough sea, another exhaustive day. Whit worked diligently, chopping and slicing through the bait. His gloved hands were now accustomed to the work, his fingers slipping and turning. The memory fused into his muscles. How sad it was, he realized, that his muscles held more memory than he did. That the fibers of tissue running through his frail body felt more real, more corporal than he did. The knife in his hands more an extension of himself than his own limbs. He shook the thoughts from his head. It was the weariness speaking, the exhaustion overtaking him both physically and mentally. The sea was rough, the waves roaring as they slammed into the side of the Sonia. The old hull absorbed each blow as best it could, but there was no complete relief from the sea's violence. The wet, cold kiss of the Bering Sea cut through the air in intermittent splashes that soaked the deck. But even as the sea raged against the interloper vessel, Whit found himself in a trance. Each slice of the knife brought the blade closer and closer to his hand, and yet he only watched the glinting metal rise and fall, pull and glide. No change made to its pattern, no adjustment in the name of safety. The same every time. The boat lurched as a wave slammed into its side. The sudden impact broke the trance as the edge of the blade sliced through the thick outer fabric of the glove. A warm sensation erupted beneath as the cold metal dug into his now exposed skin. He didn't cry out, didn't even feel pain. He just stared at the crimson flow erupting from the cut. Jesus, Whit! Justin ran over to him, balancing himself against the rocking and swaying of the boat. Whit looked down to see the sheen of water atop the deck below him, now stained red and spreading out across the dock. Justin reached him and yanked off his glove. The bloody mess pulsed as pain slowly overtook the adrenaline in Whit's system. Is it bad? Justin held Whit's hand up and looked at it closely, the flaps of skin angling just upward at the split. It's not good, said Justin, but I can stitch it up. Justin, I need you over here, called Riley from across the deck. He was pulling up a pot and struggling with the angry fits of the sea. Shit, said Justin. He took the beanie off his head and stretched it out, wrapping it tightly around Whit's mutilated hand. Listen, run down to the hold. When you walk in, there's a first aid kit hanging against the wall. Inside is a little plastic thing with I think it's blue, thin wire wrapped around it. Justin! I'm coming! Look, there's that and a needle in a plastic pouch. I need both of those. Whit nodded, the pain growing exponentially as he felt each pulse push more blood from the wound. Justin stood and hurried across the deck to help Riley secure the pot. Whit wondered how Justin had even seen the accident while in the middle of the arduous task. Poisonous thoughts began to fill his head. Was he being watched? Was that the decision of his shipmates, that Whit should be watched at all times? He could take the silence and occasional outburst of frustration, but the thought of being watched, being mistrusted, sickened his stomach. Get out of your head, he told himself. He stood and went inside, turning left upon entering where a short staircase led down into the bowels of the Sonia. At the bottom of the stairs was a cramped accessway that allowed minimal movement. The boat technically had 4 freezer holds, but the catch so far had only required the use of the first one. Whit opened the door with his uninjured right hand. The steel screeched as the old door slowly swung open. He reached inside and felt blindly for the light switch, finding it with the tip of his finger. The freezer hold appeared before him, a rectangular room now lit by 2 flickering bulbs hanging from the ceiling. A haze of frozen mist emanated off sacks containing wrapped crabs from earlier catches. Again, the thought of the deformities slithered into his mind as he realized he had no idea if Freddy had actually put the crabs down here. But the number of sacks provided the chilling realization that he had. There was no rhyme or reason to the placement of the sacks, but instead a rather haphazard randomness. Sprawled across the floor, they sat like the carcasses of dead things lying in ice. The first aid kit was hanging on the wall, just like Justin had said. Whit opened it and saw the plastic apparatus that was wrapped along the edge in blue string. Next to it was the needle that Justin had mentioned. Whit grabbed them both and prepared to leave. Then a sound came from deeper within the hold, something akin to the excited scuttling of claws on a hard floor. Like a dog excited its owner had come home. Whit froze and looked around through the visible haze of his breath. Empty sacks waiting to be filled hung from descending hooks, blocking his view of the hold's edges. Whit couldn't help the intrusive thought that a person could easily be placed within the bag. And with the thought also came the sudden realization that he was alone. His back turned to the rest of the crew, comprised of people Whit did not know. Not really. But there it was again, the scuttling sound of quick movements. From right to left across the hold, the realization crept into him as the hair on his neck and arms stood at attention, not from the cold, but from the slow rising notion that he may, in fact, not be alone down here. "Hello?" he called out. A stupid thing to do, no doubt. There couldn't be anyone down here. It was far more likely that a crab was still alive and wandering around the hold, their bodies naturally involved to handle freezing conditions. But somehow that was worse, because he'd seen those monstrous things. He'd seen their legs squirming with infinite growths emerging from their exoskeleton. His stomach churned, turning and rolling at the images seared into what memory he still had. There was another feeling, one that seemed to linger on the freezing air that slunk and squirmed its way under his jacket and across his prickled flesh. One that manifested itself outside on the deck and now returned in the cold heart of the boat. The feeling of being watched. "Hello?" he said again, hearing the stupidity of the question and yet powerless to stop its asking. He took a step into the freezer, the frigid air enveloping him in its icy grip. The exposed skin on his cheeks began to sting. His dry lips began to crack. Another step inside and the feeling beneath his jacket became needles, spinning and driving into his pores, into his bones. Something moved from right to left, hidden by the darkness beyond the reach of the pathetic lights, obscured by the hanging bags and that frozen mist that radiated from them like some living thing with thoughts of all its own. He pushed the bag aside, feeling his insides tighten with the tension of what he might see on the other side. A sharp pain filled him as the cold punctured his ears. Another bag, then another scuttling sound. Only there was more. In the shadows beyond the next bag, a dark figure moved with the sound. Low to the ground, wide and quick. Whit froze. His mind screamed at him to take a step back, and then another, and another until he was out of the freezer. But his muscles refused. His bones ached and froze. He was a statue held together by fear. Something touched his foot. He looked down to see the bag at his feet had been ripped open, and a crab was hanging out of it. One of the deformed ones, the awful legs writhing and churning upon themselves, feeling for a way out of the bag. Whit stared at the thing in horror, his eyes wide and stinging as the moisture froze within them. The crab's mouth moved with separate rhythms, each independent of the other. Its eyes twitched and looked upward at Whit. His blood ran black with dread as he felt without doubt that the disfigured thing was looking at him, communicating with him. Through its back, Whit saw the pulsating rise and fall of a beating heart, but not just one, more. The animal's back undulated like the waves of the sea, as though it were not a single organism, but some horrid symbiosis of many. Whit yanked his foot away and stumbled towards the bag in front of him. The crab slowly pulled its body free from the bag, its legs dragging the rest of its form from the slit in the canvas that reminded Whit now of the slit in his hand. Then, when the crab was free, another followed, their red alien forms emerging from the bag like freezing blood sludging from an open wound. Whit's hand throbbed at the sight. Then they moved, one by one, toward the back. Whit stood still and watched them as they crept across the icy metal floor. They moved, breath stuck in his throat as they passed him, but they kept moving, scuttling underneath the bag and into the shadow. More scuttling came from behind him as well, as Whit turned to see dark forms crossing the floor in strange, jerking movements, all towards something hidden in the corner. Whit turned and grabbed the bag, throwing it away. Then he could not hold his breath in as it escaped in a scream. Slumped in the corner was Mike's corpse. Ice was built all over his face and clothes, his knees tucked up into his chest and his hands beneath them, clasped in what appeared to be a prayer. The crabs, dozens of them, crawled atop his body, their mouths working as they nibbled and ripped at the frozen flesh of his face and hands. Then he saw Mike's ears, bleeding, not frozen blood, but fresh and flowing, pooling on the floor as the crabs lapped it up. Mike's head moved toward him. His eyes were gone, but something moved within the sockets. Whit tried to find his breath as two long, spindly legs raised within the darkness of Mike's empty eye sockets, their pointed ends extending out of them toward Whit. Mike's mouth opened as if to speak. Whit screamed as he fell backwards and pushed away from the macabre display. The beanie had fallen away from his hand. The streaks of blood stained the floor as he kicked himself away. "Whit!" came a voice from behind him. He turned in terror to see Justin standing in the doorway. "The hell are you doing?" Whit tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't respond. He struggled to his feet and turned to point Justin in the direction of the site, but there was nothing there. No crabs, no corpse, no torn bags, just the streaks of his own blood along the ice. He panted, sucking up what little air he could find. He was no longer cold, but sweating beneath his jacket. He searched for words, but found none. "Jesus, you're bleeding all over the place," said Justin. He moved over and helped Whit rise to his feet before picking up the dropped first aid items. "Let's go, man." "He didn't see it," Whit said through his exasperated breaths. "My God, was I dreaming?" "We'll talk about it later, but right now we've got to get you stitched up." Justin led Whit from the freezer. As the door closed, Whit took one last look inside. In the frozen space, the bags of crabs slumped on the floor and empty bags drooped from their hooks. All except for one. One bag near the back left, the last one Whit had pushed aside. It didn't slump, but hung with weight, with mass, as though something heavy were hidden inside it.
Bravo, sir. I do. That is a great example of how you were saying you build things and it's hard to write short. That's so much. It just described there. It's beautiful. Yeah. When an epic storytelling gives me a complete visualization. Thank you for this. Yes. Jenny, did you have some more questions?
Just the comment. I love how you are, how you make the characters feel, how you can feel like you're right there next to them. You're feeling what they're feeling. You're feeling what they're seeing. I love how you can help us put ourselves in the situation they're in by how you tell the story. That has been a wonderful thing over the last few days. Well, I guess it's been more than a few days since you gave me your first story and I had to go find the others.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, going through their journey with them. Now, I had a question for you, and maybe it might require, I'm going to ask kind of one question that's kind of generalized, but as an English teacher, Do you how do you encourage your students as far as both their reading and their writing goes? And what kind of projects do you give them and outside encouragement and things like this? Because I know you said also beyond being a teacher and an author, and definitely a reader, do you also kind of mentor, as you said that you moved around a lot and got to deal with the new kids or the outsiders? I'm kind of throwing a lot of you at once, but it's like, how does your role as a teacher work with your life outside of it?
I live in a very small community, and the truth of the matter is, we really don't get too many new students. So in terms of like mentoring, if or talking to new kids, and I'll be honest with you, I don't usually get too many. Um, in terms of what I try to do in my classroom, my approach has changed over the years. I've tried to adapt to the kids changing, and kids have absolutely changed. This particular year, the year that just ended, was by far my hardest I've ever had in education. Um, it's kind of hard for me to assign things because I would love to assign. There's a lot of things I would like to do, but unfortunately, right now, our current educational climate that does things like the kids are all using AI to write their papers. You see, just plagiarism that's not even hidden anymore. They just do it out in the blue, and they don't understand why they can't do it. And when you tell them, they get mad, and a lot of times their parents get upset too. Like, well, I don't understand why it's a big deal. But occasionally I'll have like maybe 2 or 3 kids who will come up to me and start, picking my brain, ask me questions. And with them, a lot of times what I try to do is just tell them, look, write the most honest story you can. We live in a very artificial society right now. And one of the things I think that people crave, I know I crave it, is authenticity. And I think people can tell when you're being authentic. And I think people can tell when you're full of crap. So when you're writing, try to portray, what is happening, or a character, or whatever the case may be, in the most authentically you way possible. Because the truth of the matter is that these stories are not really unique. I mean, I told you before, this story was conceived as if Moby Dick was written by H.P. Lovecraft. We're all telling very similar stories. The magic is in the way that different people are using their own voice to tell those stories. So for a lot of these young readers and young writers that want to pursue this, it's, find the way that works for you, that you feel your voice is most authentically present in whatever it is that you're writing. And it's not gonna be the same as everybody. I tell people all the time, like, you'll see comments on like Facebook groups like, hey, when does this get good? Or, I don't want a slow burn or something of that sort. And I'll happily tell people, I was like, look, give me 50 pages. If I haven't grabbed you by 50 pages, you might just need to put the book up. Like, it might just not be for you. You might need to go find someone that's more quick pace. Maybe that's the voice that you find, appealing. But for me, I think I don't consider my book slow burn, but that kind of dread slowly building, kind of the way that chapter is structured, is very much how I view writing, and how I feel as though, when someone reads a book with my name on it, they know that this is the kind of story that they're going to get. And this is the kind of storytelling that they're going to get. So for my students that are curious about it, it's, hey, be as authentically you as you possibly can. If that means you want to slow it down with details, slow it down with details. If that means you want to speed it up and write like a quick, fast, like James Patterson style, like just get it going, hey, do that too. There's nothing wrong with it. Tell your story in your own way. Wear your influences on your sleeve. Just be authentically you. And then in terms of like just regular class stuff, I can't answer that because I'd have to get my kids to actually do the assignment first before I can give them any kind of feedback. And that's a chore in and of itself at this point.
I'm sorry. Half of my family are teachers, so I can kind of relate with the struggle. I did tutoring and discovered that I could never be a teacher, because as a tutor, at least they are interested in learning, but even that is so difficult sometimes with people. And sitting in classes and watching a teacher struggle, and then knowing that I have to take their students afterwards and be going through stuff, and just being like, I actually saw a teacher lose it once and say, okay, most of the time people say there are no stupid questions, but there are, and you're the one asking them. So please quit wasting all of our time. Come to me after class if you have any questions. And it was just like, wow, okay. Like when somebody just breaks like that because they had so much pressure on them,
We've all
I
had
just
them.
know I couldn't do it.
We've all had that moment. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I haven't. I think, I mean, I've said before, I'm like, that is a really dumb question, and the kid knew it was a dumb question. That's why he was asking it. So I mean, it's an extremely hard job. That I don't think I really don't think a lot of teachers get the kind of credit they deserve, especially like I'm not even in like a really rough situation. Like my school is not a bad school. And I know people that are in legitimately rough places that just give it their all every day. And like, God bless them. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's and like you're saying with the conditions that everything is in now, with everything has to be a certain way, with politics has entered the schoolyard, and that's made everything really rough. And just all the tech, when I didn't even think about AI being used for cheating, because that's, and how do you check that? I mean, you
I
can,
mean, like I'll put it this way, like the way that I usually check it with AI, especially, AI likes to pick out like words that it likes. And for some reason, I don't know why, but whenever these kids were writing an essay on, it was an essay on Henrietta Lacks and the Gila situation. Myriad was the word that it loved. So I got like 20 essays with the word myriad. So I literally stood in front of the class and I was like, I will literally give the entire class an A right now if one of you can tell me what this word means. And they just stared at me like I had lost my freaking mind. They didn't even know the word was. They didn't know why I was asking the question. I'm like, because y'all used it in every one of your papers.
wow.
And some of them forget to even take some of them even forget to take the hyperlinks out of the essay. That part's always funny.
Oh God, that floors me. Okay, I'm so sorry. That just has to be horrifying to go through.
This is why we write horror.
Exactly. Speaking of why you write horror, what was your inspiration to begin being your own writer? From Jody.
Whew. How much time you got? So
However much you need.
I've always loved reading. I like to joke around that I was a child of Scooby-Doo and Goosebumps. And at a very young age, I really just devoured books, and I loved them so much. And I was always thinking up stories. I would even I used to sit there and I'd like trace the outline of the trace on a piece of paper, and I'd like draw like a really crappy cover and like put my name on it and like what the title of my book would be. And it was like, kid's dream. And as I got older, no matter what I kind of did or where I kind of went, like the idea of writing was always in the back of my head because I was always reading. And horror especially was always kind of like it was my thing. It was what I was most interested in. My stories would always kind of go that direction. I would sit, like I could try to sit down and write like I don't know, like a thriller, like a psychological thriller, and then it'll end up with some, I don't know, malevolent deity causing it all. Like, I don't know why this is. And then, I wanted to do it. I stopped and started. I've probably got like 25 different chapter ones written on some old computer somewhere that never saw the light of day. And then, as, the world starts to kind of, you change as the world moves on. And I was just convinced that it was a nice little dream, but it's time to get real. It's time to, face reality. Even though I had this idea in my head of this story that I wanted to write, which was The Broken Places. And then COVID happened. And all of a sudden I found myself with a lot of time. So I was like, all right, well, I'm in my house. I'm not going anywhere. We were teachers, so we got off in April. And then even when we went back to school, we had like this weird like staggered schedule. We were off on the Wednesdays. It was a virtual day. So I had all this time and I was like, well, shoot, man. Like, I mean, if you're ever going to do it, this will be the time because you have the time. So I just sat down and, I would write till 2 a.m. because, screw it. I don't have to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, and then that process, writing that book, it was just like, it kind of opened my entire mind up. And I was like, oh my God, I really like doing this. Like, even if no one buys this book, like I like doing this. And so from there, then all those stories that I'd been churning around in my head for years, a decade or more, just started pouring out. And now I get to write them down. So I guess the inspiration would just be the fact that I always love stories. I'm from Louisiana. We do a lot of storytelling down here. Both my grandparents were tour guides, so they were always telling stories about the areas around where they grew up. I spent a lot of time with them on like tour buses in the back while they were giving their tours. And one of the things that is, like we're in Louisiana, so you have a lot of plantation tours, and a lot of plantations are like really dark places when you look into their histories. And, my grandparents never, danced around that. Like my grandparents' house was less than a mile away from the Myrtles plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, which, if you don't know what the Myrtles is considered one of the most haunted houses in the United States. It's a plantation home. And the reason why it's haunted is there's some really dark stuff happened at that plantation, as did all plantations. So I literally got to be like witness to that, and hearing those stories and how dark a lot of them got, that kind of, I would guess, molded my storytelling as well. All my stories would kind of follow the same little dark river.
It's very cool. That's something we get a lot when we talk to people. It's parents and grandparents who were storytellers lead into writers, and it's kind of like you grow up and you have this. You're hearing the stories, and you're a big reader, and you having a storyteller kind of tradition in the family, and it's so neat that I love that you got to have all that history when you got. I'm very jealous of you, by the way. It's just
Yeah,
like, wow.
the Dark Rue is actually dedicated to my grandparents.
Very cool.
For that specific reason, because it was from them that I fell in love with the Southern Ghost Story.
So, this is just Jody says, "What an awesome experience, though very dark, but strong basis for storytelling." This is a question that I'm just asking you because I heard it and I want to check how accurate it is. The La Laurie house. Is it real? Was that really, that all really happened the way, like with, for those of you not familiar, but
yeah, obviously
I
can't confirm it. I don't, but from what I understand, yeah, it's real. It's the history of that place is just, oh my God.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Delphine LaLaurie and her husband lived in this place in what is now like it's now the French Quarter, isn't it? I believe
it's a hotel now, or not hotel. I'm sorry, it's a museum. It's a museum now. I'm sorry, it's a museum now.
Okay, I was gonna be like, who in the hell would stay there on purpose besides me? It's something, if you might be familiar with it because Nicolas Cage owned it for a short period of time, but it is an incredibly haunted house that pretty much anybody who's ever owned it has ruined them. And the reason it was haunted was the original owners took slaves and kept them in the upstairs, chained to things in the attic, and they would also chain them to the rooms that they worked in and stuff so they couldn't escape. And experimented on them, did like really fucked up surgery, just really messed up people, and ended up like somebody said fire so that when they had a party going, so that people suddenly were going in and realized what was going on when the firemen and such went in to try to uh, rescue who they could that was in there. They discovered this and they rode out on their took a carriage and escaped. And as far as I know, that was nobody saw from them again. But they were
Yeah,
almost
the story that I always heard was that the house was, when they were living there, the house was still considered haunted by the locals because the locals didn't know what was going on in the upstairs, and they would hear screams and not realizing that it was the chained up slaves. Like, they would think that it was like ghosts, and that's why the house had that reputation. It wasn't until the fire that they realized, like, oh my God, this is what's actually happening here. And yeah, just got in the carriage, rode off.
But yeah, so if you guys like history, New Orleans, wow, you get a lot of crazy stuff going on there. But also, if you like mythology and different kinds of stories and the Gothic folk, you should read some Blaine Daigle because he combines it all together wonderfully. And it's so, as you were saying, you've been told, atmospherically wonderful. Your character depth is huge. Like I get to know each character in it. And some of them I might not have gotten till towards the end of some of the books, but because you kind of had in the Endless Sea, a couple O'Halloran and Freddie are slightly, you get a feel for them, but you don't really discover their full character towards the very end. But it makes it that much richer, I think, because of all the little hints and bits and bytes that you've put in as you go through. So, yeah, did anybody have anything else, or shall we see who wins the book?
I have others, but I want to wait till mine. So
yeah, I was gonna say you have your own show as well. Okay, we're going to pull up the giveaway. Oh, and Jody is definitely going to be reading some Blaine Daigle. All right, let's go through here. Ready to go. And Dylan, you are the winner. All right. I will be going ahead and I will get your information from you so that I can get this sent to you at the end of the show. And, well, we're at the end of the show. But Blaine, where would you like us to find you? Where do you like to have people reach out to you at? And do you have anything like signings or shows coming up?
I do, actually. So on August 3rd, I will be in Evanston, Illinois for the Books of Horror, Books and Brew convention that they're doing. And then the next month, that's going to be incredible, by the way. If you have the opportunity to go to that, it'd be amazing. And speaking on that, if you do have a copy of A Dark and Endless Sea, and if you go to my publisher, Wicked House of Publishing's page, and comment that you have it, you can be entered to win free tickets to that, which include tickets to the actual event, as well as being able to sit down and have lunch and talk with me. They're going to be doing a drawing for that tomorrow, I think. So hopefully if you're able to get it in, that'd be great. And then the next month in September, I am going to be doing TBR Con in Tennessee, which is Megan Stockton's thing that she just started up. In both cases, I'm sharing a table with Andrew Nyberg, who is the author of Galatalk and The Mobius Door. Incredible writer, great dude as well. So yeah, I've got those two things coming up. I also have 2 audiobooks coming out. On the 25th of June, A Dark Ruse audiobook will be released. And then in July, I think it's July 16th, is A Dark and Endless Seas audiobook. So very busy summer coming up for me.
Wow. And where do you like people to reach out at you?
Best place is on my Facebook. I have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter or X, whatever the frick it's called now. I don't really ever do much on there. That doesn't seem very active, but Facebook is very active, as was Instagram. Reach out with a message. I respond to everything that I get. I do love hearing from readers. I know some writers can be a little bit, off about that. But I actually really, really enjoy it. Also, if you're interested in signed copies, Facebook messaging is the best way to go. I have not mastered the art of the online store yet, so my website doesn't have it yet. I do intend to get that soon. When soon is, hell if I know. Whenever I can figure it out. So Facebook is honestly the best place to find me.
Okay. And his links, as well as ours, should be in the comments up above, down below, to the side, in your head, somewhere, wherever you're watching from. They all have them in different places. Since Friday has the longest sign off, I'm going to do mine right now. If you would like to reach me, you can find me at Carrie Sanders, Kari. If you see a crow, that is me. And that links to all my author stuff, to the Owlite stuff, to my Splash Pages show, also here on the Dorkening. Tomorrow night we have Tomb of the Terrible. We're watching Dracula 3000 here on Owlite. Tuesday, we have Paul Kupperberg coming back on Splash Pages, so that's going to be exciting. We always love having Paul on the show. And yeah, that's all I have about me right now. If you contact any of my socials, with the exception of my main page, you'll be speaking with Friday, who is the best cosplayer of all of the Owlite Network's peoples, because she is all of us. And Friday, how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Message me on Facebook. That's usually the easiest, but you can find me on Owlite. You can find me on Fakehor. The next episode of Unprinted Pages, we have the amazing Blaine Daigle and Parker Levette, and we'll get to find out about their writing styles, what they have to say about a million amazing things. Probably not that many, but I'm so excited to get to talk to them. And we have so if you'd like to actually talk to me, come find Friday with the Library in the Blue Box, or my author page, Jennifer Elliott. And we have a new anthology out, the Owlite Menagerie, where Delphine and I and Raz and many amazing authors have stories in. And all of our proceeds go to the Pro Literacy Foundation, where they help people find the success they need and help them learn how to read. And they are totally amazing.
So, yeah, reach out to us. Please keep track with us with the Menagerie. It is already on sale on Kindle. We'll be getting up the hardbound, on all ebook formats. Hardbound will be coming out soon. And please, 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 we always forget to ask this, but we hope it isn't too much to ask for you to like or subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you're on. We don't need you to pay for anything. We just like to get those numbers up a little bit, especially if you have the time over on our Twitch right now. If we can get up to 50 followers, and we're well over halfway there, it allows us to do more interactive things with our audience, where we can let you kind of influence some of what we do there. We mostly use that one for our D&D podcast, but yeah, there's some gaming and stuff going on there too. So please like, subscribe. We love you guys. And Jody says good night, and good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.